One of the most common and powerful rules in composition is the rule of thirds, which helps us decide where to place the subject in the frame. The rule of thirds simply states that an image should be divided into thirds horizontally and vertically, like a tic-tac-toe board. When the image is divided, there will be 4 intersections of the lines, and the subject should be placed at one of those intersections. Now, this is Lauren, and she'll be helping us as we learn more about the rule of thirds. It's natural to want to place the main subject in the center of the image. It feels almost like it belongs there. Our cameras also tend to encourage us to place everything in the center because that's often where the camera will focus and meter. However, when the subject is directly in the center, there's lots of empty space around it, and the image will feel stagnant and will not engage the viewer. Typically, snapshots often have the subject centered in the frame, so let's take a few pictures like that to help us see the difference of the rule of thirds. Since we're photographing a person, we'll want to make sure that the background is blurry, so we'll set the camera to aperture priority mode, and we'll set the aperture to the lowest number. We'll take a few pictures. When we divide the image into equal thirds horizontally and vertically, we have some guidelines to help us know where to place the focal point of the image. We should aim for the intersections of the lines, which will place the subject or the focal point slightly off of center, both horizontally and vertically, but not so far off center that the image looks out of balance. This will make the image asymmetrical and more pleasing to the eye. Although images are more visually interesting when the subject is off center, it is also important to keep the image balanced. Think of an image like a teeter-totter. On a teeter-totter, if all of the kids are on one side, it won't be much fun. Similarly, if all of the visually interesting subjects fall on one side of an image, the composition won't be very interesting. A strong composition will have horizontal and vertical balance, but the balance doesn't necessarily need to be things of equal size. For instance, if we were to place Lauren on one side of the frame, this bush will provide visual balance for the other side. A small bright area can be balanced by a larger, less intense area on the opposite side of the frame. Just like 2 kids of different sizes can make a teeter-totter work if they adjust the location of where they're seated, the 2 sides of your image don't need to be identical, just of equal visual weight. The idea of having an interesting composition is to make the viewer want to stay and look at the image for as long as possible. When the subject is placed off-center, its importance will be emphasized and the viewer's attention will be held longer. If the composition is centered, it will look like a photo that anyone can take. It will appear to the viewer to be what they expect to see. As you're composing your shot, try to surprise the viewer a little by placing the subject off-center. As the viewer contemplates the reasons for the placement of the focal point, they will start to read meaning into the image. So let's experiment using this theory, and we'll take a few pictures of Lauren using the rule of thirds. As we look at both of the photos of Lauren, we can see what a difference the rule of thirds can make. The image with Lauren centered in the frame doesn't hold the viewer's attention as long as the image with Lauren off-center. As you're deciding which intersection to place the subject or focal point in, think about which part of the subject you'd like to be the focal point. When you're taking close-up pictures of people, you'll want to keep their eyes in the top third of the frame. If you place the eyes in the middle or lower third, it will look odd to have them so low with so much space above the subject's head. Also, if the person is facing to one side, you'll generally want to give them more space toward the side they are facing. Otherwise, it will appear that they're looking out of frame and it will guide the viewer's eyes out of the frame as well. The rule of thirds also tells us where to place the horizon line in landscape photos. Generally, the horizon line should not be placed directly in the middle of the image. That will make the photo half sky and half ground, which is not visually intriguing. By placing the horizon at the top third, it will make the mountains look bigger, more majestic, and give a closed-in feel to the image. If you place the horizon on the lower third, it will give your image a more open feel. One way to learn this idea is to take several pictures of the same subject with different compositions. Let's try this experiment. We'll take several pictures of Lauren. We'll take a few pictures of her placed at each of the 4 intersections of the rule of thirds. Now we can compare these images side by side to see which third is most pleasing for the subject and scenario. Often people are drawn to images where the subject is on the right third of the image. This may not be the case every time, and it's important to trust your own eye. As you're out taking pictures, remember the compositional rules and choose the ones that you like the best. As you develop your own photographic style, you'll be able to work faster because you've already had in mind what composition you'd like for a given image. Often there will be other secondary objects in your composition that are important to help tell the story of your image. Keep the rule of thirds in mind when deciding where these secondary objects should go in your composition as well. By placing them at one of the intersections, you will help ensure that they are noticed in your composition, and they will be given consideration when the viewer is thinking about the meaning of the image. If the secondary objects are outside of the intersections, they may appear as important, and they may actually distract from the primary subject. Likewise, if they're placed directly in the center of the image, they may distract from the primary subject. The placement of these secondary objects should be given as much consideration as the main subject. They can be what is unique about your photo, and they can often be the meaning of your image. When including secondary objects in a composition, it's important that these objects help tell the message of the image. They should not look out of place or they will distract the viewer. It's very important to have an image that is unified to keep the message straight without confusing the viewer. As a photographer, it's your goal to help the viewer understand the message you're trying to send with your image. The viewer can be drawn to anything that looks different or out of place. If the secondary subject looks out of place, it will take the attention away from your intended subject. If there's something that looks out of place or distracting in your image, find a way to make it not so distracting or eliminate it altogether. When setting up your shot, it's wise to only include what's important and nothing more. Keep it as simple as possible. By eliminating distractions, you will strengthen the power and the message of your photo. Another compositional element to be aware of is negative space. Negative space is the space around the subject. The subject itself is the positive space of a composition. When you're taking pictures that include negative space, you'll want to make sure that the rule of thirds is used so the negative space doesn't distract from the main image.